I want to touch on this book you have because I have touted your previous two books and I have not read this one. It's called Dynasties. It's behind you. The 10 GOAT teams that changed the NBA forever. So I haven't read it yet. So you got to give me two teases here. So the first one's the Celtics, right? With Russell?
Nope. Earlier. The Minneapolis Lakers with George Mikan.
Okay. Why did they change the league?
They started it. Like there is no league without them. NBA was like this fumbling kind of second-rate pro league. Nobody cared about pro basketball. Colin, they played in cages. They were called cagers back then. It was like kind of a joke. People cared about college basketball and AAU, but George Mikan was such a big draw. He was a unicorn in every sense. This was before 7-footers played basketball. This was before when you saw somebody tall in the street and you wonder, hey, do you play basketball? Like nobody thought that about tall people back then because tall people didn't play basketball like that. So this 7-foot dude who started playing basketball became such a draw, and the only draw, by the way, the only marquee figure, because there were all kind of pro teams that were popping up and failing. But wherever Mikan went, that's who had success. So when his league merged with the league that would become the NBA, they won 3 straight. They proved the NBA or professional basketball in America was viable. Without them, it ain't happening. They're the Sugar Hill Gang of the NBA. No hip hop without Sugar Hill Gang. No NBA without the Mikan Lakers.
Okay. Now give me one of the 10 teams I'd be surprised with in modern history that I may be caught off guard with.
The Pistons? Would you be surprised by the Pistons, maybe?
Yeah. The Lambeer, Isaiah, Rodman, Sally, Mahorn Pistons?
Yeah, the bad boy Pistons made it to the chagrin of the Elijah Watt Houston Rockets and even the LeBron Wade Miami Heat. But I definitely valued the Pistons' like impact on basketball, how we just, no matter where you go, if you say bad boys, you know what we're talking about, right? They are cultural icons in addition to being champions, to repeat champions. And people forget, like, they were in the run. They won 2 titles, but they were in the mix for like 5 years. They just took some great L's, but that was a great team. They changed how we view defense. They changed how we viewed physical players. Like they actually low-key invented the stretch 5. Bill Laimbeer might have been the first stretch 5 in NBA history when you think about it.
Oh, now that is a great point.
They evolved the game in a way people sleep on. The 2 guards, the 2 little guards, Isaiah and Joe Dumars, who could shoot. Like a lot of that stuff wasn't commonplace at the time. And they did it, and we never forget them. Like they're cultural icons. So I went with them.
By the way, you know what's interesting about that team? How many coaches and general managers were on that roster? It's one of the smartest, most accomplished basketball executive teams ever. And we thought of them as tough and wrestlers and dirt. Lambeer coached, Dumars, Isaiah. It was full of really successful horn.
Yep. And you know what's crazy? People talk about their defense and all that, right? But you know what really made them elite? But they were an incredible offensive team. As a matter of fact,
Vinnie Johnson, microwave.
Yes, they were incredible offensively. They started as this offensive team and they developed this defensive identity, but they were incredible. They had 2 guards who could shoot the lights out. They had a 5 who could shoot. They had dudes coming off the bench who could get you 20. And remember, people forget they had Adrian Dantley, who's one of the great scorers in NBA of all time. Like this was an elite offensive team that learned how to play defense and built this identity, and that's how they became champions.
So in your book, do you rank them in terms of basketball greatness or just cultural and kind of macro level greatness?
I went against my better judgment to rank them because I feel like this conversation is a little bit more important than rankings. I thought about the 14-year-olds who are falling in love with the NBA and like educating them about it. Because to me, I feel like one thing we don't do in basketball enough is appreciate the previous eras. So it's easy to look at the Russell Celtics and say, man, Bob Cousy was dribbling with his palms, right? Like, like we can look at that and say it's not a big deal. But I feel like I wanted to create more of an appreciation for them. I wanted to create something that was greater than just rankings. So my bent was to kind of follow the growth of the league through the eyes of the dynasty. So you could see how the league started, how it evolved, how it advanced, and how it infiltrated itself into culture and society, but through the lens of the dynasties.
So you start with Mike and you probably go to the Celtics, and there's this sense that there was a gap in the 70s with no super teams. It was the Sonics, it was the Sixers, it was the Blazers.
The Knicks, yeah.
So did you go from like the 60s to the 80s? Was there a gap with no dynasty?
There was a gap. There was a gap, but I did talk about the gap. But there was like this power vacuum in a sense where there was a lot of good teams, and they all kind of won, by the way. The Blazers, the Sonics, the Knicks, they all had their time. They just didn't dominate the era. And then the next domination comes with like the Showtime Lakers, right? Is when Magic and Kareem team up. But that era, that's one of the things. That's why I wanted to write this book. We don't know about the 70s era. We don't know about any of these teams who were great, had great players. We talk about the Willis Reed game. We don't know that was Clyde Frazier. He was incredible that game 7 in the 1970 finals. So it's stuff like that where it's like, I just want people to know about it more than debate about it.
Well, I grew up loving basketball in the 70s, and I liked the Washington Bullets and the Sonics, where the Bullets had Kevin Greavy, Phil Chenier, Wes Unseld, Elvin Hayes, Kevin Lockery, I think, was their coach. And they faced the Sonics in back-to-back finals. Sonics had Gus Williams, who I think next to Bernard King's the most underrated player in league history, Dennis Johnson, John Johnson, Lonnie Shelton, Jack Sikma. Those teams both, if Seattle wins 2, we think of them differently. If Washington, I think, only won 1 as well, I think they split. And so the 70s did not lack great basketball players.
Yeah.
What happened is they just all took turns doing it. The Sixers were really good in the 70s.
Man, the Sixers are one of the teams
Cheeks, Tony, Steve Mix, George McGinnis. They were loaded.
So the Sixers kind of hurt, like they hurt my heart, right? Like I feel like that was a great team that gets zero love, like none. You never even hear about them, and they were so good. We know about Cowan and the Celtics. We know about Bill Walton and the Blazers. We know about the Knicks. We even know about downtown Freddie Brown and Lenny Wilkins, right? We know nothing about that Sixers team, which was incredible. Like it really kind of hurts a little bit. And then you go like, think about this. They end up having Dr. J, Andrew Toney, Moses Malone, and they were in all of those wars with the Lakers and Celtics.
Yeah,
we don't even. But like, if one go differently, we're talking about them. And
absolutely,
not maybe one of those other teams, but they just kind of get X'd out of history because Magic and Bird won the most, but they were right there. So it's the Sixers, man. The Sixers are like the great basketball franchise that nobody ever talks about. Like it's unbelievable, and I feel like we should know about this, but we don't.
Yeah, Billy Cunningham was the coach, the fiery coach. So no, listen, I grew up with those in that era, and those Sixers teams. I don't even know what they missed because their forwards could score. Caldwell Jones was more of a defender. They really did have it all. It's really crazy. They should have been a 2 or 3-time champ. They really, the construction of that team was much better than the Heatles. It really was.
No question.
Bigger, better guard play, more depth. LeBron was so special. He overcame, and he completely dominated the Eastern Conference. So the path to the finals was easy.
They lost 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 finals. It's like, it's cold-blooded when you think about it. They're the greatest runner-up team, like that nobody ever talks about. It's unbelievable how good they were. And obviously, a lot of us know that, the whole beat LA chant started because the 76ers beat the Celtics in like a war of a 7-game series. And Boston fans were like, all right, now you got to take care of the Lakers. But those teams, they had Daryl Dawkins as the center. Like some of these teams were so loaded and so good and so right there. They just happened to run against Magic and Larry Bird, which is cold-blooded.
Okay, I can't wait to read this. Dynasties, the 10 GOAT teams that changed the NBA forever. Get your publisher to send me a copy. Marcus Thompson, as always, buddy, I love talking to you.
I'm sending you one, and it will have penmanship inside of it. How about that?
You're the best. Love your stuff.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you.